Hi everyone, welcome to my Tuesday video. My name is Claudia and I'm with Time for Stamping. I'm going to be working with the Inspiring Imperfections bundle again today. I did last week and I was using the DSP and the coordinating colors that come with it. This week I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. Still using the same bundle, but I've added some other colors. This one is Cherry Cobbler, and this one has Cajun Craze and Crushed Curry are the main colors in here besides the gold foil. I did want to remind you that the sweet sale is going on right now, started today through the end of the month. Buy one, get one half off. That's all sweets and all sweet products. So even if you don't want a whole suite, if you just want a couple different designer papers, as long as they are a part of a suite, you can buy one, get one half off. So, with that being said, let's just get started. Now again, I'm using the Inspiring Imperfections, both the stamp set and the dies, as well as the embossing folder. If you haven't seen the embossing folder, it's really neat. It's, let me show you here. Maybe you can see it a little bit better the way that looks. It has all different patterns, kind of florally patterns in there, as well as the cracks. I'm calling them cracks because in the Japanese culture, when they break a nice vase or bowl or whatever that's part of their family heirloom, they just glue it back together and put gold around it so that you can't tell where the cracks are. And of course it's Tuesday, so Bentley has to start barking when it's 2 o'clock on Tuesday. Be quiet now. Quiet now. Okay, so again, these are the two cards I'll be working on today. So I think I'll do this one first. Let me get these out of the way. Now for this card, I actually have a base made out of Cajun Craze, and it's your typical A2, which is 8.5 by 5.5, and it's scored at 4 1/4. So we have the A2 size card. Okay. Now for this, for the next piece here, which has that gold foil in it, I'm using a piece of the designer paper that comes with this suite. It's the Kintsugi. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's the Kintsugi Inspirations. Now this one is white with gold on it, so we're going to color this up a little bit. Get these out of the way. So first I'm starting with Cajun Craze and a blender brush. So just add your color to your brush, come in from the corner, and just start with nice circular motions, start applying your ink. Always come in off the side so that you have a nice start to it. You haven't just kind of blotched it on there. You can make this as light or as dark as you want. And again, come in off the side and just with circular motions, just keep adding your color to the depth of color that you want. Now I'm going to be adding Crushed Curry next. So I'm putting it a little bit darker down here in the corner and then going lighter as I come up. Okay, and that looks pretty good to me. So let's put this color away. And the next color I have is Crushed Curry. And we're doing the same thing, coming in from the side. And I'm going to go over this part of the Cajun Craze just a little bit. Blend those two colors together. And then keep going up with the Crushed Curry. And again, you're coming in from the side of your piece, so that you don't have any blotchy patches on there. Blending in with the Cajun Craze just a little bit, and then adding the crushed curry on the white part. And then I'm going to leave this upper left corner plain. Just leave that white so that we have kind of a 3-color background with the gold foil on that, just like that. Okay, and then when you're satisfied the way your color looks, we can just go ahead and attach that right to the card base. Okay, so I'm using the Tombow glue for that. I like using the clear. So this is 5 1/4 by 1 inch. Okay, isn't that pretty? You can see the nice color blending in there. So now we're going to get started with some of the focus points to put on there. Now this particular vase is white and it has the gold foil on it. And this is from the designer paper. Okay, all I did was use this die and cut this right out of the designer paper. There's one sheet that has, I showed you last week, that has 14 different vases like this, 14 bowls, and 14 flowers. So all you have to do is take your dies and cut those out, and you're good to go. And then I use the dies to cut out of gold foil, another vase and a bowl, and I use the embossing folder to put some texture in that. And you'll notice they're both a little bit different. So let me show you if I can on, let's put this in here and see if that shows up a little better. You can see the different textures that are in this embossing folder. So I just put the vase in this part here that has like the branches of flowers, and then I put the little bowl in this part that has kind of a hexagon with flowers in it. Okay, so just pick out which design you like and put that on. So we have 2 vases and a bowl or a cup, whichever you prefer to call it. So we're just going to put these on, just glue those right on like that. All right, and then the cup or bowl I'm going to put up on dimensionals. So I've also cut out of Cajun Craze again some of the little kind of outlines of flowers. We have this one, which is a bigger one, and then I cut out a couple of the smaller ones like that. And then I also cut out some of these, I guess you would call them the cracks. If you wanted to, you could put this right on your vase. You see how that looks? Isn't that pretty? And I have a couple like that and one like this. So those are just going to be embellishments that I'm going to put on there. Okay. And then another thing I'm going to do is stamp a flower. And I'm stamping this with Cajun Craze onto a scrap piece of white cardstock. Okay, so I'm just taking the flower, stamping that in Cajun Craze. All right. And then I'm going to add some gold embossing powder to that. Now, unfortunately, Stampin' Up! Does not sell this little tool, but it's a Versamark pen, and honestly, I got it on Amazon. So what I'm going to do here is just touch a couple of these petals and some of the leaf, the openings, with my Versamark pen. Let me pull it in just a little bit so you can see that a little better. Okay, you're not going to be able to see the ink, but I'm just going over, just adding a little touch of the Versamark onto the petals. Put my powder on there. Okay, so that's what that looks like. Now, if you have some over your ink, you may want to brush that off if you have a brush, or you can use the point of your scissors or whatever, toothpick, whatever you happen to have handy to brush that off of the stamped ink. In this case, I have it on Cajun Craze. So, have that on, and now I'm just going to blow this, just heat it up. Okay, so now you can see how pretty that looks with just a little bit of gold embossing on there to touch off those petals. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the leaves. Just add a little bit of Cajun or a Versamark pen to that. And again, I got my pen off of Amazon because Stampin' Up! Does not sell it. I wish they would. It's a nice tool to have when you want to do something like this. Get that off of my ink. I'll go ahead and set that. Okay, so now you can see how pretty that looks with just a little bit of gold embossing on there. Isn't that pretty? Okay, so let's cut that out with the die. Coordinating dies fit really well. You'll notice this die, again, has a little hole at the bottom here. And that is to line up with the stem on your flower. So you put that on. Make sure you can see just the very tip of your stem through that hole. And you know you have everything lined up well. Okay, I can see the stem. And I just have to turn that just a little bit to make sure my flower's in the right place. And I can go ahead and cut this out. Okay. All right, so there's my flower. And that's one of the other embellishments that I'll be using for my card. Okay, I think I've got everything set here. So let's start building. All right, I'm going to put this one down first and then have the gold on top of it. Back you down just a little bit. Okay, put that like that. All right, so let's go ahead and glue this one on. Now there's actually 3 different designs with this particular vase, the white with the gold on it. I like this one because it's a little bit busier. And it kind of stands out from the gold on this background. So that's why I kind of like that. Okay, so I'm leaving the top just a little bit loose for the moment, because I'm going to be putting those flower embellishments under there. So I'm just pressing down on the body and the bottom of the vases right now and leaving these up. Okay, so now I'm going to take this and put this on as a flower coming out of the white vase. Okay. So you can put it either way you like it. You have it like this, or you can have it like this. I kind of like it this way. It gives it a little bit more interest, I think, in the way the flowers come out, kind of bent over a little bit. So just a few little dabs of glue, and I'm going to tuck most of this right under that vase, and then I can press my vase down. Okay, so we have that, and then I have a couple of these. Now, as you can see, okay, I can turn one way and one the other way, again, just to give it a little more interest. So we'll put this one on, kind of coming out like that. And then this one I'm going to put on the opposite direction. And just have that one come out like that. Okay, so even though they're the same die cut, they look a little bit different because I put one up one way and one the other way. Okay, and now I can hold the rest of my vase down on the top here. Make sure that's glued down really well. And this little one I'm going to put up on dimensionals. So let's go ahead and do that. And then we're going to tuck in some of those little sticks or cracks for the vases, but I'm going to use them as sticks. Okay, so this one is going to go right like that. Okay, now I'm not sure you can see the dimension here, but this one's up on dimensionals. These two are flat onto the card. Okay, so now I'm going to play with all of these little pieces here and put them coming out of this bowl. So, got my little locking tweezers here. Another little tool that I picked up actually at Hobby Lobby. I know some people have asked me where I've gotten it, and I did get it from Hobby Lobby. Again, it's one of those tools that's very nice to have, and Stampin' Up! Does not sell it. So they need to get in the game. Okay, now this piece here, this longer one, I'm going to trim just a little bit like that. And just use this part with this long stem, long branch coming out of the top. Just tuck that under. And again, these are out of Cajun Craze that I cut. All right. And then we have another, using this other piece. That's the other half that I trimmed off. Nothing goes to waste. We can use it all, right? So this one, I'm just going to put, kind of tuck it in here. I must have my dimensional there. I can't tuck it very well. So I will just trim that a little bit. See if that helps. Yep, there we go. Okay, and you could leave it like that. It looks a little off balance to me because we have this coming off on this side and not that one. So I'm actually going to use another piece over here. For this one, I think I'll just cut off this little piece here. Okay, so again, just tuck that in, balance that out a little bit, and you are good. Okay, so the other thing we're going to do is this flower that we made. I'm going to put this up on dimensionals also. So let's go ahead and do that. So I like to use 2 full dimensionals here on this, but I also cut just a little tiny piece for the stem here because I don't want that to fall down, to get squished down. So let's see here. If I can just cut a little tiny piece. And it is very, very tiny, as you can see. Just put that right there. Okay. And we'll just kind of set this right here. Maybe like that. Okay, and that just balances that out really nicely. All right, so there's the front of this card. Now for the inside, I just have a piece of basic white. And it's 5 1/4 by 4, so we'll have a nice border of Cajun Craze behind that. And I'm going to use actually a different, let me show you on my sample. I have a sentiment from this particular Inspiring Imperfections stamp set. And this one just says sending happy thoughts. And I like this one. And this comes from a retired set called Wildflower Designs. So I'm just going to put that right up here. Like that. Stamping out of Cajun Craze. And then if you want, you can stamp the flower down here again. So let's go ahead and do that. Put that right there. And let's see, I kind of messed up my flower here a little bit. See if I can fix that. There we go. So now, again, I'm going to use my Versamark pen and add some embossing powder to this. Okay, actually, you know what? I really don't like the way that turned out. So, boom, we're just going to flip it over and start over. Okay, sending happy thoughts. We took all this time to make a pretty card. I don't want to have it have one little area here not look nice. So we'll try that again. There we go. That one's much better. All right. Again, Versamark pen. Just a few little touches on the petals. And on the leaves. Add some embossing powder. Okay, so that looks pretty good like that. Brush off a little of that excess and heat it up. There we go. Okay, so there we have that. Let's just go ahead and put that inside. Now there's the side that I messed up, but nobody will ever be the wiser, right? Unless you tell on me. So let's put this down here. And voila, we are finished with this card. Isn't that pretty? I just love, I tell you, this is a great little tool to have. It's just called Versamark. It's just a marker. Just like it's called a watermark pen by Versamarker. So it is a really handy tool when you just want to add a little touch of embossing powder to it. Okay, there is card number 1. Now if you wanted to, you could do that flower again on the outside. I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Okay, so now here's the second card. Now for this particular card, I used Cherry Cobbler as my base, as well as for the vase, and then I brushed some Cherry Cobbler ink onto my designer paper. Now I'm going to recreate the same card, only I'm going to do it in Berry Burst. This is a nice, bright, kind of dark pink fuchsia looking color. And I wanted to see how it would look with this color. Now you could use the exact same card design and do it in blues or greens or whatever you want. Okay, now I have, again, another piece of gold foil that I embossed with the embossing folder. This is 2 1/8 inch wide by 4 1/4. I'm sorry, by 5 1/4. So I have that, and then I have a piece of the designer series paper. That's 2 inches by 5 1/4. So this one I am going to brush with Berry Burst. This is a color that's been around for a few years, and it's really pretty. Kind of like Melon Mambo, if you remember that one. Okay, so again, we're just going to come in from the side and add that color on there. Isn't that pretty? Oh my gosh, yeah. let's add some more. Now I'm going to put color on this whole piece. On the other one was a bigger piece, it was the whole background, so I added 2 colors and then kept a corner of it white. So for this one, I'm adding color on the whole piece. It's only 2 inches wide, and it'll make a nice side piece for the front of the card. Okay, now this looks like it's turning out a lot darker in person than it's showing up on the camera, so when you're doing this, just, you know, add as much color as you want to make it as dark as you want, or as light as you want. There we go. Now, as I said, in person, this looks a lot darker than it's showing up on the camera, but that's the way it is, right? Okay, so now this is going to be, let's see, I actually forgot to bring another piece of white down here, so we're just going to use this one. Okay, this is 5 1/4. Actually, I can't because I cut that 5 1/4 as well. Okay, well, we're just going to put it right on top of the card without a border and see how that goes. Okay, now this one you can see I have a white border around there. I have another piece of basic white. This one is just going to be right onto the card base. So you'll be able to see the difference. All right, so I'm going to put this piece on first. And they will overlap just slightly, just so that you have a nice, nice seam. It doesn't, you know, butt up against each other. The gold is going to cover this one just a little bit. Put that down just a little bit more. There we go. Okay, and then my gold embossed piece. So you can see it just barely overlaps, but it's just enough so that you have a nice smooth seam there. Okay, so now for this one, I have another piece of berry burst, and we're going to make a vase on this with the stamp, and I'm using Versamark. Okay, so all I'm doing here is stamping my Versamark vase onto a scrap of berry burst. I will add my embossing powder. And heat that up. Okay, now isn't that pretty? Oh my gosh, yeah, that's really pretty. You can see how that looks a little bit different than the one on the cherry cobbler, but it's very pretty. Okay, so now I'm just going to cut that out with the die. So I'm going to get that done. Alright, so there is my pretty vase, which is going to go right on top of there, actually. So I'm, again, putting this up on dimensionals. So one here, and one at the top. And I'm just going to undo the bottom and the middle one right now, and leave the paper on that so that I can tuck in my flowers. Okay, so there we have that so far, and you can see how I left that loose. All right, now we need to make some flowers. So again, I have a scrap of basic white. I need to clean my stamp because it has Cajun craze on it. Okay, so now, again, I have Versamark, and I'm going to make 3 flowers. So here's flower number 1, number 2, and 3. Okay, now I know you can't see this. I can barely see it myself. But we're putting gold embossing powder on here. And now you can see the flowers. Aren't they pretty? Okay, so let's heat that up. Okay, whoops, a little bit more right there. Always double check when you're embossing to make sure that you've totally melted all of your embossing powder. All right, so now I have 3 pretty gold flowers. I'm going to use Berry Burst Stampin' Blends, both the light and the dark color, to color the petals. All right, so let's bring it in a little bit. You can see that a little bit better. Okay. So the petals, there's not really a whole lot of space here, so you're not doing a lot of coloring, but just enough to add some color to make it coordinate with your background paper. All right, so I have the light, adding a little bit of dark towards the bottom of the petals. Now, if you happen to get ink onto your gold embossing, now I'm not noticing it so much with this color, but I noticed when I used the cherry cobbler, it kind of covered up the gold a little bit, in which case just take your color lifter and go over the gold, and it'll pick that color right up off of the gold embossing. Okay, and again, this time I'll start at the bottom and work up with the dark. And then add a little bit of the lighter shade to the top of the petals. Now again, I'm not sure the camera is picking up the subtlety of the colors here. There you go, if you can see that. But it looks very pretty in person to see just that little bit of color among the gold embossing. In the gold embossing, you could use black ink if you don't, or if you're not embossing. This really adds just another layer of elegance to your card using the gold, if you happen to have it. It's a nice thing to play with. Add some elegance to your cards. There we go. Okay, have those done. Now we need just a little touch of green for the leaves. So I've chosen to use Old Olive for these. And again, I'm doing the same thing, just adding a little bit of the lighter shade. And coming in with the darker shade and just a few little touches here. Again, just to add another layer of elegance to make it look a little bit more realistic with a two-tone leaf. Just blend those together. And then, of course, we're going to use the coordinating die to cut these out. And as I mentioned before, there's a little tiny hole in the tip of the die where the stem is, right there. You can see that. And that is going to line up with the bottom part of your stem so that when you have this in place, you should see some of that gold. You can see that coming through that hole. If you happen to have it like this and think, oh, that's pretty well lined up, but you don't see gold there, you just see white, you're not lined up, okay? So make sure that once you have this on here that you can see that little bit of gold stem or whatever color you're using to stamp, that you can see that through that little tiny hole. Okay, so let me cut these guys out. There's 3 of them here. There's one. I was playing with this the other day, and it was just so, I just had to laugh because I accidentally dropped one of the dies I was using. It was one of them that I was cutting out these little tiny pieces with. And it's not like it bounced or went anywhere. It was just, boom, straight on the floor, and I could not find it to save my soul. So I spent 15 minutes crawling around on the floor, looking for my little die that escaped. And I finally found it. Thank you very much. So, okay, so now we have these 3 pretty flowers. We're going to put 2 of them under this vase. All right, let's back it down a little bit. There we go. Now these are going to be glued on. And before I do that, let me also tell you I have cut out some of those pretty little flower embellishment outlines with gold. So this is actually going to go up here, and then the flowers will cover that up. So let's see how we want to put this. One like that, and one more or less coming out this way. Okay, so let's go ahead and put this one on first, since that's underneath everything. Okay, so let's see. Maybe about like that. Or should we put it this way? Let's see, which way do we like it better? Kind of like this side, I think. All right, we have that one. Let's put this flower on, and these are just glued right onto the card front. Have one over here. Make sure you're not extending over the edge of your card. And this one will come up this way. Okay, and now I can take the back off of this dimensional here and push my vase down. Now I need to hold these flowers down for a minute, make sure they're sticking. When you use gold embossing, when you heat it up, it tends to warp your paper just a little bit. So you need to make sure that you have that glued down and hold it down. And this flower we're also going to put up on dimensionals. So let's get that done. And again, I've got 2 full dimensionals, and then I want to put just a little piece on that stem to hold it in place. So I'm cutting just a little tiny strip. And I find it easier to use my scissors like a forceps or tweezers or whatever you want to call it. Okay, now this one, we're just going to lay right over here like this, just to break up a little bit of that gold. Okay, let's make sure you're on there. All right, and then we want to put this little flower, this little gold piece. We're going to put that on the vase as if it's some little flowers coming, kind of crashing over your vase a little bit. So let me see. Let's just put that right like that, coming off of there. All right. And then I want to put a greeting here. Now on this one I just have a nice little hello, which is from the Beautiful Motifs set. But I'm also going to use another stamp from that just says thinking of you. Okay, and I'm using Berry Burst, a 3/8 inch strip. Like that. I'm just going to cut that right straight on that end, and then this one add a little bit of an angle just to add interest. And again, we'll put that up on dimensionals. So this is kind of a narrow piece here. You could use a half a dimensional or use like these little end pieces here that you have left. And this will be my greeting that we're going to put right up here. Okay, now the one other thing we can do to add a little bit of elegance to this and a little bit more interest is these are the flower accents. They actually coordinate with this set. They're pretty bright shiny gold, and they look like little flowers. So I'm just going to put a couple of these, scatter a few of these around, maybe one there, another one over here on this side, and then one down here, like that. Okay, now this one little piece here, I think I need another dimensional. It's kind of sticking up a little bit. So again, I'm just going to cut a little piece, take that backing off, and put that right under. Yeah. There we go. Okay. That'll help that stick down a little better, like that. All right. So there we have that one. You can see, doesn't show up very well on the camera, but one is Cherry Cobbler, one is Berry Burst. Maybe that's a little bit better there. All right. For the inside, again, just a piece of basic white. You can put whatever you want in there. If you want to put another flower, you can go ahead and do that. So let's see. If you want, we can put, this would be heat embossed. So let's do that. Put a little bit of gold on there. Okay, let's heat that up. Okay. Now sometimes I've found when you heat it up, like I said, it warps a little bit. If you heat it on the other side as well, that kind of balances out that little warping that you get there. Okay, and then if you want, we can go ahead and color these. So again, a little bit of light old olive, a little bit of dark old olive, and then using Berry Burst to color the flower. I have both light and dark. So we'll go ahead and add that as well. Got my light in there. And as I said, if you happen to go over your gold embossing and it's kind of covering up your embossing, just use one of the stain lifter pens. I'll show you that, and just go right over the gold emboss and it'll lift that color right off of there. Okay, so just use your stain lifter and just go touch right over the gold. Make sure you're not touching onto the petal itself, but just the gold, and get that color off of your gold embossing. Alright, so since this card just happens to say thinking of you on the up front, I'm not going to put a sentiment in here. But, of course, you could put whatever you want. You could even make this a sympathy card if you wanted to, or a birthday card, get well, or write your own message, which is what I'm going to do. All right, so there we have it. In Berry Burst, in Cherry Cobbler, and then we have this one with Cajun Craze and Crushed Curry. Hope you like those ideas. Don't be afraid to add color to your designer paper. Kind of gives it a little bit of a different look to it, but it works really well, okay? So I'm not going to be here next week. I have an appointment that I must attend, so I will not be here next week. I'll see you in 2 weeks, hopefully. Till then, take care, and don't forget to craft. Bye-bye now.